Oh, there he goes. Jesus.
So in this video, we're going to go deep into a lot of topics, but they all tie back together to Bigfoot. I'm going to leave links in the description box below, so everything I say you can research for yourself if you're so inclined. So for the last couple of years, I have been actively pursuing video evidence or any type of physical evidence that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, 𝗬𝗱, whatever you want to call them, is real. And I've gone to every corner of the United States, and I've used my massive subscriber base to get information from people to point me in the right direction. So I'm not just wandering blindly through the woods, knocking on trees and screaming like a Bigfoot, I guess. I've gone to places specifically that people have had activity in the recent times, and almost every time I find some sort of evidence, but not quite the evidence that I'm looking for. Now, what got me started down this path? Well, it's something that's in the Bible, and it's actually on the first page of the Bible. In this video, I'm going to present to you the fact that Bigfoot is not a quote-unquote undiscovered ape, but he's actually part of the giants mentioned throughout history in all religions. So to hear what I have to say, you're going to want to sit back, you're going to want to relax, and you're going to want to check this out. Before we jump into this video, which is going to be very long, I'm going to remind you to hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell next to it so you're notified of all new videos. This is going to be a long video, but there will be chapters. Here we go. So before we get rolling, let me get into this real quick. Unlike other overland channels or other overlanders, quote unquote, I've been doing this a long time, and I actually don't just build a truck and park it and take pictures and drink coffee and talk about it. I go out alone into the most remote areas that I'm able to access with my vehicle. And when you do things like that, you tend to run into things like the topic of this video, Bigfoot, for example. So I just wanted to put that out there. This is part of overlanding, in my opinion. So for those that don't know, I've had 3 interactions with Bigfoot. I didn't choose Bigfoot. Bigfoot chose me. My entire story is available on Bigfoot Crossroads. I did a podcast with Matt several months ago, and I laid out the entire story to him. I've also had 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗱, who is on the trail of the Nephilim, on my YouTube channel years and years ago, and I also had the opportunity to interview 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗱 from the Sierra Sounds before anybody knew who he was. And then, again, recently, I went up to Humboldt County up in Bigfoot country and spoke to a couple of law enforcement officers that had interacted with Bigfoot as well as residents. So this is not a new topic to me whatsoever at all. So let's get that right out there, right off the rip. So I know a lot of people aren't going to like this topic whatsoever at all, but here's the deal. I'm going to show you a lot of information that points to the fact that Bigfoot is probably a descendant of one of the quote-unquote Nephilim or giants that were written about, carved about, spoken about in all of our history except in modern day. And I'm going to show you a lot of information to back that up so you can make your own decision. So put it this way, if you've never had an encounter with Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, chances are no amount of information anyone's going to present is going to make you believe, but lots of video has been put out there that is straight up showing a Bigfoot. Lots of studies have been put out there. Lots of DNA tests have been put out there that prove that this thing is real. But then on the other side of that coin, because there's always a flip side, there's plenty of videos out there that are completely bogus that the mainstream claims are real, which I find very strange. But the mainstream works hand in hand with the same people that basically run things. You see what I'm saying? You catching what I'm pitching? I hear you. So let's start with this. And I know it's redundant because I had this in a video before, but do you remember the old days when the military, the Pentagon, the White House would laugh and ridicule people that had the nerve to believe in UFOs? Well, that's taken a slight turn since the old days.
Here is to make a one-stop shop for not only the reporting of unidentified aerial or anomalous phenomena, UAPs, we're going to call them from now on, but also to put out information once a UAP incident has been identified and resolved, or at least as far as DOD and the apparatus working on this can get it. So you'll see they've already posted some fairly new videos of UAPs. This one, I believe, is of a commercial aircraft they determined after looking at the video itself and other information they had. But the idea here is that DOD is well aware of not only the interest in this, but also that these can be a national security issue. And that's why this is so important to the Department of Defense. So at some point soon, this will be a place where current and former U.S. government employees can go and can submit reports of UAPs, even going back decades. And then after that, within a couple months, according to the Pentagon, the public will also be able to report on UAP incidents. There's also more information here. This is a typical UAP report, or what they expect to see in one of these reports. Some interesting information here. Most of these are described as round, of a size between 1 and 4 meters, somewhere between 10 and 30,000 feet, a color of white or translucent there, or silver, and then moving anywhere between stationary to Mach 2, which is about 1,200 or 1,300 miles an hour. So certainly a bit of a range there. Now, there's also a map of UAP hotspots. We'll call it UFO hotspots to make this a little easier. And you'll see these areas where the hotspots are the East Coast, the West Coast of the US, the Middle East there, and then Eastern Asia. So also interesting on where DOD says they get most of their reports. Again, the idea here, and the reason this was created, the Arrow office was created to standardize this and to try to figure it out. Brianna, as of last update, they have some 650 reports of UAPs they're going through.
So in my lifetime, they have changed. People that believe in UFOs are tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, nut jobs that should not be believed in any way whatsoever at all and should be mocked on every occasion. They've also taken advantage of the fact that they're no longer called UFOs, they're called UAPs, because they're basically rewriting history. It's funny because I spoke to someone the other day that was half my age and they didn't know what The Sopranos was, and that bummed me out. But here's the deal, in another 10 years they won't know what UFOs were. All they'll know is UAPs. Do you see what they do here? They mix it up, they change it up, they're covering their tracks. And we're going to get into that. So let's start off with giants. You saw giants in the Bible and you think it's real? Well, here's the deal. About 12 years ago, I wanted to disprove the Bible, and by doing so, I jumped on Genesis 6, where Jesus talks about there were giants in those days and there will be again when the Son of Man returns. And I'm thinking to myself, this is easy. I'm only on the second page of the Bible and I can already disprove this. So I started looking into giants, and this is what I found. Now, bear in mind, I thought this was going to be easy, but then you find things like this giant footprint in South Africa, and then another giant footprint that's in stone in New Mexico. And of course, the mainstream media says these things were carved. Carved. You can't carve a footprint like this into stone. And when I say that with some experience. Number one, I'm Italian, so I know a little bit about masonry, and I've been a builder my entire life, except for like the last 10 years, because building takes a toll on your body. But I've worked with some really serious artisans, and when you show them things like this, they laugh. They laugh because, first of all, the mainstream media and experts, scientists, quote unquote, claim that these things are hundreds of millions of years old, but they were carved. Let me tell you something. If anybody was around a couple of 100 million years ago, the least of their worries was, hey, let's carve some really large footprints that look exactly like an actual human footprint into stone just for fun, because we've got nothing else to do. It's ridiculous. And people say, well, they would tell us. Experts, scientists, government, they would tell us. Well, it's fun to say that, but it isn't true whatsoever at all. Think about it. People that go into all these high-tier jobs in the government, in the military, the people that keep all the secrets, they love power. And powerful people have always run the world. Period. What they tell us and what they know are two drastically different things.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
They've known about UFOs for years and years and years. They knew before we did, I would imagine. But they lied about it for half a century. And now they've repackaged UFOs as UAPs, and here we go. And I guarantee they'll use UAPs to their advantage. Remember I said that, or don't. Now, I did a video on this 12 years ago, but 6 corporations 12 years ago own all the media. Everything you see, read, hear, research, etc. is owned by the same corporations. And that was over 10 years ago. So now I guarantee it's whittled down to a lot less. They own the media. CNN has their own booth right inside the Pentagon. How is that being the fifth estate when your reporting office is sitting in the Pentagon? People need to wake up, or not. But let me digress on that. So maybe the giant footprints that are in stone, in literal rocks that were found here, there, and everywhere isn't enough proof for you. And you know what? It wasn't enough proof for me. I'm going to show you more proof. I'm going to show you proof from doctors, ex-presidents, and newspaper articles to start with. So the first thing we're going to do is jump into the Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where the stories go there were 3 red-haired giants, double rows of teeth, 6 fingers, 6 toes, that were cannibals, and they were eating people, and the Indians eventually trapped them in the cave and burned them all to death, only to be found later by batshit or guano miners, and then explored later. Well, according to the mainstream media, that's not necessarily true. That didn't really happen, so forth, so on, and blah, blah, blah. Now, when I first started researching this stuff over a dozen years ago on a different YouTube channel, there weren't any debunkers. But nowadays, they're crafting the narrative, so they debunk this stuff. But sadly for them, I found this, thanks to a YouTuber called Explore with Jim, who I'll leave a link below. I found the actual documentation right from UC Berkeley from 1929. Yeah, put that in your hat and smoke it. So according to the mainstream media and all the debunking channels, there were no red-haired giants found in Lovelock Cave in Nevada whatsoever at all. But fortunately, I have the actual documentation from the guys that did the survey in 1929, and it's all right here on Berkeley UC's digital library. It was tough to find, but on page 178 of the 263-page document of every single thing they did when they did the architectural dig in there, it says, in the south end of the cave, about 20 feet deep, we unearthed some skeletons. In the north central part of the cave, about 4 feet deep, was a striking looking body of a man 6 foot 6 inches tall. His body was mummified and his hair was distinctly red. There was a grass rope around his neck with a knot under the left ear. The rope was about 8 feet long. The feet were bound together with the ankle to above the knees with stout rope. The mummification was complete except for a part of the abdomen. The other mummies all had red hair. I think there were either 4 or 5. Those that appeared to be women, something small like a Japanese woman in height. This was not altogether due to the shrinking of the bodies, is mummifying, because the man was, quote unquote, a giant. The woman had a moccasin skin, blah, 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 which read on this, so forth and so on. So, in this video, I'm not showing you all the random photoshopped videos of a guy, a skeleton that's 40 feet tall with a guy with a rock hammer. I'm showing you all the evidence because there's literal floods, no pun intended. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But it's all right here, and I'll leave links below. This was by L.L. Harrington in 1929, Lovelock Cave, blah, 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 subject topic, Paiute Indians. And strangely, the Paiute Indians also wrote a book, and they told about fighting the red-haired giants that had 6 fingers and 6 toes, 2 rows of teeth, and they ate people, because this was very real. And The powers that be don't want you to know about this because this entire thing completely flies in the face of evolution. Period. That's what they're doing here. There is more proof of giants walking this earth, just like the Bible and many other religious texts talked about. In evolution, they have some bones, and then a mile away they found a jawbone, vis-a-vis Lucy. Do you see what I'm saying? This stuff is very, very real. So let's continue. So I promised you we'd have something from a president. Let's go with Abraham Lincoln. And I'm over here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. This is the official website, so forth and so on. Everything I'm showing you is legit, and everything I'm showing you, I will leave links in the description box below, unlike most YouTube video makers that just quote you stuff and never actually back it up with anything. You have to go with what they show you. This paper is from September 25th to the 30th, 1848, and apparently Abe was standing at the corner, or he was standing in front of Niagara Falls, noticing its beauty and all this other stuff, the power, this, that, and the other thing. But what I like to show you right here is on page 2, where he says, if this much is lifted up, for this one space of 200,000-300,000 square miles, an equal amount must be lifted for every other equal space. I believe they were talking about building Niagara Falls or putting a turbine or something like that. He is overwhelmed in the contemplation of vast power the sun is constantly exerting in the quiet, noiseless operation of lifting water up, rained down again. But there is still more. It calls up the indefinite past, when Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, nay, even when Adam was made, first came from the hand of his maker, then as now. Niagara was roaring here. The eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones filled the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now, contemporary with the white race of men, and older than the first man. Niagara is strong, fresh today as it was 10,000 years ago. This was a handwritten document by Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to guess he wasn't a stupid man who didn't know what he was saying. If he had just mentioned, giants of America, this, that, and the other thing, but he didn't. He mentioned whose bones fill the mounds of America. The mounds of America, of which I've visited all of them personally. They're real. And I'll get into that. This is video I took many, many years ago, and at the time it was the first 4K version of the Great Serpent Mound ever on YouTube. I own that title, so there you go. I've been here a couple of times, and the second time I was here, there were a bunch of Native Americans doing a ceremony. I waited for them to finish what they were doing, and then I walked up to them and said, hey, could I ask you a few questions? They said, absolutely, but no cameras. No cameras whatsoever. I said, okay, cool. I said, did your ancestors build this? Is this why you're doing a ceremony? They said, we never built this. This was built by the people that were here before us. And the mainstream completely claims there were no bodies extricated from this mound, when in fact there were. I can't find the documentation, but they pulled out giant skeletons, just like you thought they would, and they did. This thing is huge. It's 1,376 feet long altogether. It goes from 9 feet deep to 3 foot deep. It's like a golf course. You can't understand the gravity of it unless you have a drone 666 feet in the air, coincidentally. But this thing is an enormous snake that has an egg in its mouth, and it looks like something called the world egg, which is some sort of satanic craziness or whatever. But these mounds are all over the United States, and people that were, buying their plot of land, plowing the fields, making farms, etc., were finding mounds on their property, and when they tried to level them out so they could farm their land, they were pulling up bones, and every one of the bones were giants, all of them. Well, if this was happening all over the United States, how come we didn't hear about it? Well, we did. until around 1947. A lot changed in 1947. Israel was created, Roswell occurred, lots of things happened in 1947 for whatever reason that I'm not going to get into on this particular channel. But in 1947, discovering giants on your property went completely silent. But prior to 1947, it was in the newspaper, just no big deal. And before I jump on to the next topic here, every one of the coils of this snake that you're seeing line up with the constellations. I mean, this is incredibly accurate. It's an amazing piece of work, and it's been here forever. It's just sitting there right in Ohio. There are massive mounds in pretty much almost every state. Some of them people have discovered, and some of them people just think are hills because that's what they look like. But what they found inside was amazing stuff that completely rewrites history, which is why all of this is covered up. You know, everything is now whatever quote-unquote experts or quote-unquote scientists say. You know, evolution was never actually proven, neither was the Big Bang or black holes. But suddenly they're just facts now, according, you know. The internet has brought us a lot of things, but the internet can also take away because it's replaced the written word and it's replaced books. And the internet can be changed. So things like this are important. And the reason they don't, it's Bigfoot isn't an undiscovered ape that for whatever reason we're the only country in the world that denies they have a primate walking around, is because it's deeper than that, much deeper than that. And pretty much everybody that would find these type of skeletons, etc., what would they do? They'd do the right thing. They'd turn them over to the Smithsonian, and then suddenly, oops, we lost them. Or we never had those. You see what I'm saying? At any rate, let's get on to something else. So I promised you newspaper articles, and prior to 1947, going back into the late 1800s, there were newspaper articles all the time about people stumbling upon giant skeletons. I mean, we're talking massive skeletons from 7 to 12 foot tall, in some cases larger, but I can't verify those. But they were all over the place. It wasn't hidden knowledge. This is also back when people believed in God, people believed in community, family, man marries woman, etc. Things have gone slightly off the track in the last couple of decades. And if you're not old enough, you wouldn't know that. And that's exactly what they're counting on. You see what I'm saying? But the amount of articles, I mean, you could find them every single day from all over the world. This stuff was absolutely, it was just mainstream news. No big deal. But suddenly, monopolies showed up. They started buying up the news. They started shutting it down because they had an agenda. They wanted to turn the world into, well, what the world is right now, basically. Prior to 1947, regularly in the newspaper, there was another person digging up a giant. 8 foot tall, 9 foot tall, 12 foot tall. It was happening all the time, and not just in the United States, but all over the world. But many of these were found specifically in these ancient mounds that are all over the United States that, you know, the powers that be, we'll call them, would simply say, oh, those were just Indians. Yeah, well, there was an awful lot of really tall Indians, except when you talk to Native Americans, they say the exact opposite. So there's that. And this is what I'm talking about. The Smithsonian publishes this back in 2017 saying a graveyard of giants was found. Well, I remember when this happened and everybody was talking about the graveyard of giants found in China. But the only one that put these quote-unquote giants at 5'9" or longer was the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is also the place where every red-blooded American turned over the bones that they found on their property. Where do you go? You bring it to the Smithsonian. Well, the Smithsonian is owned by the same rich people that wouldn't let you or me in their house whatsoever at all, and the same people that help control the narrative. Because if there were giants all over the world, like the evidence absolutely would get you convicted in court if they was used against you, proves, it ruins the whole narrative, which is evolution. We used to be rocks, and then we got rained on for a couple of million years, and suddenly we turned into monkey fish frogs. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't. I don't know. But the Smithsonian is part of the elite system that is running our national debt up into the oblivion. And fighting. We got our own federal government fighting against the state of Texas for trying to stop people from flooding through our borders. Do you see what's going on here, people? This is all part of it. It's all part of a great big agenda, a great big club, and you ain't in it. But neither am I, so whatever. And I'm not just picking on the Smithsonian, but the Smithsonian's just like the Vatican or any other large corporation or money-making entity that literally services the wealthy and not the regular person at all. They're constantly in some sort of trouble, and they're constantly doing damage control. And this one particular topic, it used to be easy to find information on it, but with the internet being what the internet is, things aren't written down anymore. Things aren't in books. They're all digital, and digital can be changed. And they do. Believe it or no, it's your call. So let's jump into something else that's another thing we've been lied to about. All these ancient structures all over the world that are absolutely magnificent, and we can't duplicate them with any of our technology whatsoever at all. And it all points to biblical and other religious text writings of people from the past. Some of these buildings are absolutely massive, machined, unbelievable, and we cannot duplicate it. Places like Machu Picchu, 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗱𝗍, places in India, Vietnam, and South America. I mean, these guys literally built churches into the side of a mountain, and there's no wiggle room. You screw up, you got to start over with a brand new mountain. But they never did screw up. They always got it perfect every single solitary time. And according to the quote-unquote experts, according to the Smithsonian, according to the governments, etc., these were all made by hunter-gatherers using bronze tools. Well, it's completely and utterly ridiculous. And again, some of these places, it's obvious these are made for beings that are absolutely massive, not the size of a normal human being whatsoever at all. It is what it is. Now, with all that being said, let me go back to something a little bit more current. Many people have talked about this particular topic, and I have as well. The Kandahar giant. The giant that our special forces literally ran into and had to fight after it killed many of them. They claim this giant was, number one, had red hair, just like the giants at Lovelock Cave. Number two, it had 6 fingers and toes. And number 3, it was 13 feet tall. Now, getting any information on that is going to be next to impossible. But the story has come out from soldiers that were there on the ground so many times that there's got to be some truth to it. But on that, I will digress. Now, why is it I'm even talking about any of this at all? Because we all live on this earth, okay? Laws, rules, regulations, all to the side. You get one lifetime to figure things out. And sadly, the wealthy people that are in control of everything literally lay out your history for you, whether it's true or not. And I believe it's every person's obligation to find out the true reason why they're on this earth and what they're supposed to be doing. And this all ties into it because our actual history is far more interesting than the story they've told us. And they're going to blame everything on ancient aliens. Well, in a way, they are aliens because they're unfamiliar to us, but they're things that have been here on Earth the entire time. And the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. And I, for one, would like to know our true history. And I believe that I've found some seriously solid pieces of proof in this video. But let me continue. So before I tie in Bigfoot to the race of giants, let me say one more thing. This is a direct quotation from writings from Amerigo Vespucci, the guy that America is named after. He wrote this. The island contains many animals of various sorts, and much water and swamps. And seeing that it offered no profit whatever, we departed and went to another island. We found that this other island was inhabited by very tall people. We landed to see whether there was any fresh water, and not thinking it was inhabited, as we had not seen anyone. We came upon very large footprints in the sand, as we were walking along the beach. We judged that if the other measurements were in proportion to those of the feet, they must be very tall. Going in search, we came into a road which led inland. There were 9 of us. Judging that there could not be many inhabitants as the island was small, we walked over it to see what sort of people they were. When we had gone about a league, we saw 5 huts, which appeared to be uninhabited, in a valley, and we went to them. But we only found 5 women, 2 old and 3 children of such lofty stature that, for the wonder of the thing, we wanted to keep them. When they saw us, they were so frightened that they had not the power to run away. The 2 old women began to invite us with words, and to set before us many things, and took us in the hut. They were taller than a large man who may be well tall, such as Francesco degli Albizzi, but better proportioned. Our intention was to take the young girls by force and bring them to Castile as a wonderful thing. That's awesome. While we were forming this design, there entered by the door of the hut as many as 36 men, much bigger than the women, and so well made that it was a rare thing to behold them. Now, I'll leave the entire story linked below because I don't want to read the entire thing because the video is going to get way, way too long. But do you understand what I'm saying? The guy that, quote unquote, America was named after literally wrote this. And of course, in modern day, they're trying to gloss over it. Oh, that's not what he meant. He didn't mean this. Let me explain something to you. If you're smart enough to be a guy that does architectural digs for UC Berkeley, or you're smart enough to be the President of the United States of America back in the 1800s when it mattered, or you're smart enough to be the guy that they named America after, I believe you could probably figure out what it is you were writing. But in modern day, they don't want you to believe that. I mean, think about it. They're trying to tell you that CO2 is bad for the atmosphere, when CO2 is simply part of photosynthesis. But on that, I'll digress. So over the last decade or so, I've watched every single solitary thing that it's come out about giants. And in this video, I've incorporated more proof than all those videos have shown combined. In my opinion, you've got the president, you've got UC Berkeley, you've got all the pictures, the newspaper clippings, etc., etc. Now, let me explain to you why I believe that Bigfoot is not an quote-unquote undiscovered primate, because why would the government hide a monkey, and when it is in fact a relative of these giants, and probably a relative of the biblical giants. And I'm going to lay that out for you. But let me show you a few pieces of proof that are pretty much irrefutable that Bigfoot is indeed real, even though if you're watching this, you probably already know that. This is one of my favorite pieces of evidence. This was taken at Yellowstone National Park on Yellowstone's own cameras by a YouTuber named Mary Greeley. And you can see in the background, several Bigfoot are creeping up in the snow on these bison. And as soon as the Bigfoot becomes visible in the camera turns away and pans out. And this was on the National Park's own camera. And many, many experts in the field of checking videos for authenticity have gone over this, and it is indeed real. And there's more than one Bigfoot. There's 2 of them that you can see. One goes behind the tree, and the other one kind of creeps up around the bison, and then the camera pans out. So that's one of my favorites. The second best capture is by a guy named Paul Freeman, and he was a retired forest worker. He worked for the national parks for 20 years. And he stumbled into Bigfoot like so many people do, and then set about to prove that Bigfoot was real. Because once you see this, you're trying to prove it to everybody, because everyone that sees you talking about Bigfoot and they've never actually experienced simply think you're crazy. And that tends to weigh on a person. This guy was an expert in all the animals that you'll find in a national park. What they look like, how they walked, what kind of tracks they left, the sounds they would make, etc., etc. And he successfully captured video of a Bigfoot. It's not the greatest video, but I'll tell you what. Next time you're outside, try to get a raccoon or an armadillo or a black bear on film when you come face to face with them. It's tough to do, and yet he still managed to do so. So that's my second best piece, and it's the second best piece of proof. And the thing was 16 feet tall. The last piece that I'm going to show you is the Patterson Gimlin. And I know a lot of people think that somehow somebody had a deathbed confession or something to that effect. It's completely real. And if it was a hoax, where is the suit? Where is the suit that fit this person so well that when you zoom in, you can see their muscles actually moving under the hair? And you can also see their breast swinging side to side. This was back in the 60s. You know what I mean? This technology did not exist whatsoever at all. These guys went to film a Bigfoot, and they did film a Bigfoot, straight up and down. So there's lots more evidence out there as far as footage and everything, but these are my three favorite solid pieces, just because of who took them and where they took them. But here's another thing. There's been a lot of DNA evidence collected on these things, and I'm going to show you one that proves that this thing has actually been tested and proven to be nothing that anyone knows of. And because of the ridicule factor or the conspiracy theorist connotation in the background, most scientists won't deal with this whatsoever at all. But for the several that have dealt with this over the years and done a real, honest-to-goodness DNA test on it, they always come back with the same results. Unknown origin. It's not horsehair, it's not from a gorilla, it's not from a human, etc. It's something utterly unknown to science. And many people have put it in their paperwork, you know what I'm saying? It's right here on Yahoo Finance, out in the mainstream. Even the FBI has done hair analysis on Bigfoot samples, especially this one in 1976. They did a test on this, and it came up with inconclusive. They didn't know what it was whatsoever at all, so they just call it nothing and done. But it's been done. You know what I mean? This is Live Science Magazine. Bigfoot is part human, DNA study claims. I'm sure it is. Because I think for anything that is human, whether it's a giant, a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, or a human, you're going to have human DNA as a building block to start with, because that's how everybody was basically created. You see what I mean? But for those that don't know, this has been done ad nauseum numerous times. People just don't want to come out with it because nobody wants to get ridiculed. I myself, at this point in my life, I don't care. Now this one kind of annoys me because at one point, probably a dozen years ago, I actually had one of these in hand, an actual paper manual from the United States military located in the Pacific Northwest, where out of all the animals they warned soldiers of interacting with for their, if they were endangered or if they were dangerous, etc., Sasquatch was firmly on the list, straight up. And in my capacity as a YouTuber for the last 12, 14 years, I've had opportunity to speak to some of these guys, National Forest Service, police officers, sheriffs, park rangers, etc., and they all talk about it like it's no big deal. It just isn't something you can talk about out in the open, or you will lose your job, your funding, etc. They're keeping this quiet because it isn't an undiscovered monkey. That's just ridiculous. It's part of the fallen race, in my opinion. Native Americans. Native Americans told the white man as soon as they got here about A, the giants, and B, the hairy man. Two different entities in their opinion. The giants were just an abnormally large people with extra fingers and toes, and the hairy man was a giant person covered with hair that would come and wreak havoc, to the point where they took the time to actually make pictographs in the rocks. When you're an Indian and you're living out in the wild, you don't have spare time to just sit around carving things in the stone for no reason. You told a story for a reason. That's how you pass things down. And of course, they were completely written off. But this is a national forest, U.S. Forest Service National Park, the hairy man pictographs, and they go into it in pretty decent detail. And like everything else in this video, there will be links below in the description so you can review all this for your very own. Do you see what I'm saying? You're not just taking my word for it. These are the best pieces of evidence that I could come up with over the last 2 years. So that's why I'm presenting it. But Native Americans have known about these guys for a long time. And there's something that you should stay away from, because not only did they steal food, they stole people. You see what I'm saying? And nobody wants that. Now, with all this in mind, this is where I tie Bigfoot to the Bible. The Bible speaks of giants. The evidence of giants is all over the world. It always has been. The only ones that haven't seen it is most people that get all their news and information from the television, etc. In the Bible, in Genesis 25, if you go down here to, "And her days to be delivered were fulfilled. Behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out all red, all over like a hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, who took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them." The reason I say this is, what color is Bigfoot? Almost always covered all over like a hairy garment, came out in red. I find that very, very strange. And let's be honest with each other here. In this day and age that we live in right now, you can be any religion you want other than a Christian. If you believe in the Bible, you're utterly mocked. Even the government is turned against you. If you recall, when I read the article from Abraham Lincoln, the handwritten note that he wrote, he mentioned Jesus dying on the cross. He mentioned Moses parting the Red Sea. These were people of biblical conviction, and the world was a better place. The world is an absolute shit show right now, and this is part of it. The reason they don't want you to know Bigfoot exists is because then if you knew Bigfoot existed, you'd know that evolution wasn't real, which it isn't, and you know that Bigfoot is tied to the giants, because a 16-foot tall Bigfoot being filmed by Paul Freeman happens. They're huge. Came out all red, covered with hair like a garment, all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. That's your tie to the Bible. That's why they will never, ever admit that Bigfoot is real. And it isn't because, oh, if they found out Bigfoot was an indigenous person, they'd have to give him rights. Yeah? How'd that work out for the Native Americans? How's that working out for taxpayers? The government doesn't care either way. The government does whatever the government wants to do. And if you don't like it, shut up and pay your excise tax, pay your property tax, pay your inheritance tax, or just shut up. Oh, you know what? It's time to go to war. That's their reaction every single time. In my opinion, because so many people have reported running into Bigfoot, it's a terrible smell and it's an evil presence. In my first encounter, I wasn't alone. I was with a woman, and I was with a full-grown dog. And all of us at the same time, without even seeing this thing, had an overwhelming sense of dread, so bad that at 10:30 at night we packed up our camp and left. So many people run into these things and say right off the bat, it's the personification of evil. Think about this. Back in the old days, when the Indians were warring with the giants, or the giants were doing whatever, or even the Bigfoot themselves, when they would fight with each other, they would always steal women and breed with them, which would explain all the different characteristics of Sasquatch reported all over the country, etc. Do you know what I mean? But in my opinion, this is exactly why they're hiding Bigfoot, because Bigfoot throws a real onion in their ointment. Their agenda doesn't match up with our actual history. Our actual history is not what they have told us whatsoever at all. And I presented this to you. This took me a long time to make, but I'm presenting this to you because at this point in my life, I'd really like to know why I was here and what went on before I got here, as opposed to the story that they tell us. Because your government officials lie a lot because it's in their best interest. It keeps us working and poor, and it keeps them wealthy and in power. And that ain't going to change anytime soon. At any rate, I'm on the road, and I'm in a hotel room for the last 3 days making this video. So all the links to everything that I presented in this will be in the description box below, as well as the YouTube channels, or anything that I used will be below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me what you think, or don't. I'm out.